Right, so we're back with part two. Let's carry on with this.
And I imagine a lot of people, whether they're poor or not, in many countries can afford $8 for a copay or something like that. So that's all I have to say about that. Let's move on.
If you get healthcare if you're not a citizen, do you think, under the NHS?
Isn't there certain protections, but not all of them?
You actually do get healthcare if you're not a citizen. What?
Now, here's a big issue. And this is a big issue that people in the United States, whether you're Republican or...
Stop you there because it's not a big issue. The number of people who aren't British citizens accessing the health service in the UK, we're an island, we don't have lots of people it's not southern United States where you may have hundreds of thousands of or maybe even millions of Mexicans coming in every year. I don't know what the figures are, abusing the system, for want of a better term. We have people who come in, and if they're allowed to come in, then they come in and they hopefully find a job and they contribute, and then obviously they're allowed to use the NHS like anybody else. Like when people visit the United States, if you go on holiday, you're advised to take out health insurance just in case something happens to you. That's the same for people coming to the UK. You're advised to take out health insurance. But if something happens or you haven't got it, then the hospital will treat you. But it's not a major problem. It's an incredibly small issue. Wouldn't even call it a problem.
Or a Democrat need to consider seriously. The Democrats have recently proposed, and I highlighted this in a recent video, that not only whether Medicare to all go to all citizens, but they all raised their hands and said that it will also go to those who are not citizens. Now, I think the line between who is a citizen and who is not is becoming very blurred in society today. There have to be certain advantages of being a citizen to a country, and one of those must be certain rights, certain privileges. Certain privileges that are awarded to those people who have made the United States, for example, their home, who have become citizens. Now, what right does the government have over those who are not citizens?
Well, the government has whatever right they feel is the will of the people. So, for example, if at the next election, I don't think this will happen, the Democrats get an overwhelming win, get 60, 70% of the vote, then that's the democratically elected government. And if they have that policy of extending the socialised healthcare to non-citizens, it's not something I would agree with. I'm kind of on the Wealth of Nations side to a certain extent here, but that's something that you just have to suck up and accept that that's the way it is, because that's the democratic will of the people. Just like the other side have to suck it up if it's not the democratic will of the people. If people are voting and say, that's not what we want, we don't want the health service to be used by non-citizens, then you have to accept that. I think the reason why, as far as America is concerned, is that this, if you do ever get an NHS style system over there, I think because you have this border with Mexico, and you've got two quite big borders, there's a lot more of an issue with immigration and how that impacts on your whole structure over there in the US. Then that might be an issue that is a little bit problematic, more so than than it being an issue here, because as I say, it's just not a major issue here at all. Let's carry on.
Argue there is no right, for the most part, and particularly there's not a right to provide them with health care. How can that be justified? In my view, it only lead to more rorts and more taking advantage of a system. There has to be some clear lines. If the U.S. was ever to go to a universal healthcare system or a socialized system, it certainly would not include those who are not citizens. It's the same with welfare in Australia, for example. Those who are not citizens cannot get the welfare payment or the dole. And it benefits Australia, because then you don't have people who come and take advantage of that benefit. So, when we're having these discussions, please consider the ramifications. Now, universal healthcare or socialized medicine, even in the United States, includes socialized medicine for all, whether they are tax-paying people or not, whether they are citizens or not. Consider that for a moment.
About
The other thing I would say as well is that if you are extending it to non-citizens, and by non-citizens I tend to think, because if you're an immigrant and you've moved somewhere and you intend to stay, then you become a citizen at least some point in the future. If you're a non-citizen, then it means that you're either a tourist, or you're maybe doing some temporary work there for a bit, in which case, if you're doing temporary work, you are contributing to the system. So you may not be a citizen or become a citizen, but that's it. Because you are contributing to the system, then it seems only fair that you can access the benefits of that system. And not only that, if it's not a major drain on your sources, on your resources, if it's a small thing, then just from the fact that it's a nice thing to do, if a tourist ends up in an accident and they're taken to hospital and they're fixed up and they don't have any bills at the end of the day, and they go back to their country, you know, after hopefully obviously not spending a nice time if they've had an accident, but other than that, hopefully spending a nice time here, then they go back and they're left with as positive an impression of the country as they could have had under those circumstances. So it's not everything has to be about finance, whereas it's all down to the last dollar or the last cent or the last pound or the last penny. It's, you know, if it's not a major issue, then it's not a major issue, and we don't need to make a mountain out of a molehill, for want of a better term.
you're homeless.
Yes.
Correct. What about specialized costs, or specialized care, like an inhaler or an EpiPen?
In the UK, for an inhaler or prescriptions, and I'm just guessing, at the most $20.
So I'm guessing UK doesn't pay anything, which really sucks because we pay a lot. I would say
Yeah, we've already talked about EpiPens, etc. And the exorbitant prices are an issue. But why are they exorbitant is the question that we've already discussed, so I won't go into it too much. But what about the regulations that prevent competitors from coming onto the market? They are stifled by government regulation. That is one reason.
it's probably high.
Well, you can't just say they are stifled by government regulation. It's just you haven't made your point there. What is that legislation? Why is it stifling so-called competition? And why would you think that competition would work in this scenario anyway? It's clear from the fact that you have so many different insurance companies that are all competing for people's insurance, but yet your prices are incredibly, for insurance over there, is are through the roof. You know, the average $250 to $250 to $350 a month is just amazing. And then obviously you have your taxes on top of that to pay for the Medicare and Medicaid, you know, and the veterans' health, etc. It's like you already have that competition built in as an example with those insurance companies, and yet you pay through the nose. You pay all sorts of co-pays and deductibles and whatever. You pay $2,500 rather for an ambulance to be called out. You pay £10,000 to have a baby. I mean, how and why are people actually still having children in the United States? The idea that you would pay just to have a baby, as though that's something that should be costed to the individual. It's like, it's just mind-boggling. Anyhow, let me carry on.
Considering what it costs here, I'm gonna ballpark that at also another 25-ish.
Okay, it's actually £9
That's nice.
for any medication, which is about $12.
Okay, so they are cheaper.
So they are cheaper. What do you think of that?
I am still for individual medical care.
Good.
I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what individual medical care is. It's a nonsensical term. You're adding words together that don't even exist. Medical care isn't something about individual, because it doesn't just affect that individual. Yes, if you've got a broken leg, you know, you want that leg fixed and it's painful for you. But while you've got that broken leg, you may have a family that needs you. Chances are you've got a job that you're not working at now. So you've got a company, a business that needs you there, and you're in a hospital with a broken leg or whatever it is. So on a very superficial level, yes, you know, if you've got a broken leg, it's not somebody else's broken leg, it's your broken leg, and you need to get that fixed and mended so you're back to full health again. But that's a very simplistic, a very linear way of thinking about things. No, if you've got a broken leg, the fact that you've got a broken leg affects so many other people, unless you really are just an individual with no job, no family, no friends, no connections, and you're sat there in a hospital with no visitors. You know, even then you're taking up a bed that somebody else might actually want. Or when a doctor's seeing you because of your broken leg, that doctor could be spending time with somebody else. So I don't get what that means. It just doesn't make any sense. Anyhow, let's carry on.
Good on you. I don't think she knows why or can articulate why, but she's sticking to the...
No, because I don't know why. Because it's a nonsensical idea. It sounds good because as Americans we're supposed to be for the individual, which, you know, I class myself as an individualist. But that's not an absolutist position. I understand that as an individual and as an individualist, I'm not going to be able to do everything for myself and survive on my own without help, without some kind of interaction with other people, and possibly even at some point help from other people. And that's the same in all walks of life, whether you're working in a job, whether you're bringing up a family, whether you're socialising with friends or whatever. And also it's the same in healthcare. You know, there are other things to consider other than just yourself.
To the spirit of the United States, which is a spirit of independence.
Well, what, if we're going back to breaking away from the British Empire, this is what are we now? It's 250 years ago. I mean, independence is not about individualism. If we're talking about a nation of an independent nation, that's different from the people within the nation being individuals. You can still be an individual and still be social, because it's about the context, it's about the situation that you're finding yourself in. So yes, I'm an individual because I have my own thoughts, my own feelings, my own consciousness, I have my own tastes. There are things I like, there are things I dislike. I'm allowed to express those views to a certain extent. But that will still have certain consequences in wider society. Depending on how I express myself, depending on my actions. So yes, I'm an individual, but I'm not an island. So let's carry on.
And I think it's unfortunate that she selected the person who's doing the interview, or whoever's running it, selected this particular group. I think it would have been fair to present some more well-articulated arguments and reasons for wanting or not wanting socialized medicine, for example.
There aren't any. There really aren't any. When you look at the facts and the figures, when you understand the systems and how they work, how they actually work, rather than how you believe that they might work, or how you think you want them to work to reinforce your own narrative, then you can delude yourself like that, but that's not reality. You're not dealing with reality here.
Have you ever avoided seeking health care or treatment or medication or any sort of health service because of the cost and you were worried about having to pay some sort of fee?
Yes, I have experienced that a lot with patients that come in with pneumonia but have been at home for a matter of 5 days and came in when it got worse and had to be admitted to the hospital. And we're like, why didn't you come in sooner? Well, I couldn't afford this bill, so I was trying to take care of myself at home first.
Even just at school, I know people who, let's say, don't have the student health insurance plan, won't go get, let's say, like contraception or things like that because they don't.
Okay. If anyone can make an argument for the government paying for your contraception, please let me know. Let me hear it, because I don't see why it should be the responsibility of government or the responsibility of wider society to pay for contraception. I don't see how it's justified. A personal decision to have a child or not have a child is up to the individual. And I don't think anyone else should pay for it other than the person who's making that decision. But if you have an argument for it, please let me know. Let's hear it.
Right. Again, you're thinking along too simplistic, in a too what's the word I'm looking for? In an overly simplistic way. I probably need to do a little bit more research on this, but as I understand, because I have relatives who have worked in the NHS, so it may be different now. So this information that I've got is maybe a few years old. There is an understanding that, and again, this is how, because Wealth of Nations seems to be coming at it from it's very much from a moralistic perspective of, your health is for you, so you pay for it and leave me out of it and leave the government out of it, because we all need to stand on our own 2 feet, and therefore if you want to have a child, you pay for that, and if you want contraception, you pay for that, etc., etc., etc. And that all sounds fine and dandy. But that leads to certain consequences. And what we understand is that when you provide at least a basic level of contraception for people, especially young people, it actually saves the National Health Service money, because for the price of, to put it in very simplistic terms, for the price of a condom or a few condoms and a bit of lube, if you can protect people from getting diseases, venereal diseases, or getting pregnant, clearly it costs more, as we know from America, when you're charging people $10,000 to have a baby. I'm just kind of I'm thinking, it's like La La Land. It's like wow. But anyhow, clearly there is a, it's expensive to giving birth. It's expensive. Having a baby is expensive, not just for the NHS, but for the family or the woman or the young people who might be having that baby. It's expensive. A packet of condoms isn't. A packet of condoms and a bit of lube for young people who are kind of starting their relationships and maybe don't want to have children, but are reticent about maybe going out to a shop and purchasing condoms for whatever reason, just feel uncomfortable doing that, but know that they can get a certain supply for nothing from a local sexual health clinic or GP surgery or any outreach surgery and any outreach centre, and again, it's not the case. It's not always the case that these services are provided by the NHS. They might be provided by a charitable trust or by another public or private service. So it's not necessarily a case that it's always the NHS. Again, this is information from a few years ago, and it might be a little bit different now. But I think, just want to make just going off on a bit of a tangent here, which I tend to do quite a bit. I think this is a fundamental difference between the British mentality and the American mentality. Americans tend to be very idealistic in the respect that this is the ideal, this is the way we need to run things, and we need to stick to this ideal. And I think that's why there's a major problem with mental health in the United States. It's because when reality doesn't fit in with your ideal, then you have a problem in dealing with life as it really is. I think, generally speaking, I'm speaking very generally here, obviously there are many Americans maybe that are not idealists looking for this kind of utopian world. But I think more than in America, I think us Brits are more pragmatic. So we look at the information, we see what goal we are trying to achieve, we look at the information, and we try and find out what's the best path. Right, okay. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to cut costs in the NHS. So is it therefore cheaper to not provide any condoms, not provide any sexual health information, and just let children or young people, not children, obviously not children, but young people or young adults just, learn for themselves, make all those mistakes, and then whether it's private health or whether it's publicly funded health, at some point somebody's going to fork out a huge amount of money because somebody's got pregnant when they needn't have or didn't want to be, or maybe they then need an abortion because they don't want a child. When with just a small amount of cash, incredibly small amount of cash, here's some free condoms, here's some free sexual health advice. Pragmatism over idealism every damn time as far as I'm concerned. Let's carry on.
Don't really want to pay for it out of pocket.
I found out later that I had sprained my ACL. I couldn't move, but I also didn't want to call an ambulance because I couldn't afford it.
So what'd you do?
I got on my friend's back.
My sister, she has like a lot of allergies, so like instead of like using the ambulance for her like anaphylactic allergies, we had to drive her, which is very scary because you know you don't know about like traffic or anything. You don't have the same privileges as an ambulance on the road.
Have you ever not sought treatment because you're afraid of a cost?
No, ma'am.
Oh,
you know anyone who has?
I think you lied
What about
there. Your
people
body
who
language
are
said that
afraid
you
of the
lied.
cost of, say, an ambulance?
Okay, that happens all the time because we have so many Americans that don't want to go in debt and they're trying to save money and they think they can go buy a car instead of an ambulance.
So what would you think if that service was free?
If that service was free, anything that's free, sometimes it's not worth having.
And that's probably the most stupid comment I've actually seen on this video or many other videos. For a start, we've already accepted that the NHS isn't free. It's free at the point of use. We pay for it through our taxes. So for a start, it's not free. But just to come back from to what I was saying earlier on about free condoms still work. If you get a free condom and you wear it because you don't want to get your partner pregnant, yes, it's worth having. So what a ridiculous thing to say. This is the problem when people are brainwashed, or even not even brainwashed, but don't have good critical thinking skills. You make asinine comments like that just really bring your whole, or help to bring your whole position into disrespect. Because if you're making such basic, crass, ridiculous assumptions and statements like that something for free is probably not worth having, then it puts into doubt your judgment regarding everything else, at least on this issue that you're talking about. Mind-bogglingly ridiculous.
Once again, she makes a very good point.
No, she doesn't.
If something is free, generally the value of it declines in order to justify it making it free.
Well, that was very circular. And again, we've already come to the conclusion that it's not free because we pay it via our taxes. So again, I'm assuming that Wealth of Nations is a good faith actor here, but the fact that he's just earlier in the video he talks about how it's not free and how people pay for the NHS in the UK through their taxes, and now he's saying that this woman's made a good point because it's free. Well, you're either being very disingenuous or you're just being willfully ignorant. I'm not sure which one it is. Sorry if that sounds insulting, but I can't think of any other way to understand that contradiction there.
77% of people in Britain support the NHS and are happy with it. Would you say that you are happy with the United States healthcare system? No.
Definitely not.
No, and I'm actually pretty lucky because I work for the university, so my insurance is pretty good, and even then I'm not happy with it.
That's a loaded question. I have insurance, and it's good insurance through my husband's company, but we pay through the nose for it. If it were free, I would love that. And if we only paid $350 a month, that would be a huge deal.
Only
I don't believe that
$350 a
our government
month.
should be responsible for providing all of us health care. I think the individuals need to be responsible. They need to have a job.
Yes.
They need to look for jobs that provide benefits.
There's so many people, especially people.
Just stop there, because again, the ignorance there is incredible. Not everybody can get a job that provides the very best health insurance under your system. You know, this kind of platinum standard or whatever the kind of top standard is. How many hundreds of pounds a month, maybe even thousands of pounds a month is that going to cost? How many co-pays and deductibles are you going to need to provide? It's just, you know, Walmart or wherever it might be in America, you know, they're going to need people to stack shelves, and they're not going to be, these aren't going to be people who are earning $50,000 a year, $100,000 a year. Not everybody can get that kind of a job, so the ignorance there is just, for want of a better term, soul destroying. It's ridiculous. Let's carry on.
People from sort of like lower socioeconomic backgrounds who can't get the health care that
Exactly.
they need because they just can't afford it.
The premiums are still pretty high. They're not unreasonable, but they're still pretty high. The medicine I have to pay for is not covered that much, and it's not even anything great. It's literally allergy medicine. I still have to pay a fair amount every month for just allergies.
What the
People are
hell?
more than numbers, and they're more than, you know, the change that you make from, stiffing people out of their health care.
Okay, that's it for the video. So, one thing we all need to agree on is that, yes, healthcare in the United States is not satisfactory. It does need reform. It does need fixing. We can all agree on that.
Then learn the lesson. I'm going to sound quite elitist and maybe a little bit snobbish here, but I'm saying it because I think it's true. I think it's factual. Learn from nations, from countries who've been around a lot longer, who have a lot longer history, and that history has been a mixture of very good times, very bad times, tremendous turmoil, wars, famine, disease, etc., etc., etc. America, because you're only 250 years old, and yes, you know, you have a history, and you can see, because of, especially regarding slavery, you see how slavery even today has such an impact on your society. There are so many issues still to be, that seem to be resolved, that are all a hangover from, you know, Jim Crow and the whole slave trade and all that. But other than that, you don't really have a history that's embedded itself into your culture, that brings you to a point whereby you understand what's best for your people without destroying the very thing that makes your people wealthy and gives them the standard of living today, and that's capitalism. So what I'm saying is that bring in, if you want to use the term socialised, it doesn't need to be socialised, but bring in a very controlled institution like the NHS, like some form of total health care, and see how your country will actually flourish because of it. Learn from countries that have a bigger and longer history and that have gone through the similar processes that you've gone through but have come to different conclusions. It's almost certain that they're going to be right and you're going to be wrong because they've had the history, they've been through what you've been through and have come out of the other side and now have a better society for it. You're still walking these baby steps, and you seem to think that this kind of, individualism, rampant capitalism without any controls or with very, very few controls can bring you to utopia, and it doesn't. It causes dystopia. And I'm going to leave that there for now. So it's another nearly 40-minute video. Bye for now.